Let's go straight into it. Michael, you're going to tell us something, I hope, about why migration is so fantastic economically but difficult politically.
Economic growth is the great universal goal. Immigration is the greatest untapped resource for promoting economic growth. Many studies come to the conclusion that if migration were freer, the world would be richer. And I should say that many of these studies are summarized in an excellent book by our moderator, Robert Guest, entitled Borderless Economics. But the world is not taking advantage of what looks very much like a free good. Why not? Well, the Swiss playwright Max Frisch expressed the problem pithily in talking about immigrants to his country. He said, "We hired workers and human beings came instead." Now, let me elaborate briefly on that. I'm completing a book on the global economy. It has a section on immigration, and there I say this: human beings are more than factors of production. They are not simply part of a country's economy, although they are certainly that. They are also the building blocks of its society, the bearers and shapers of its customs, rules, traditions, and institutions. While economic concerns can generate political conflict over immigration, the stiffest political resistance stems not from economic grievances, but from the fear that the large-scale influx of strangers will adversely affect these things, changing the social fabric in unwelcome ways. Immigration provokes angry opposition from natives when it makes them feel that they are in danger of losing the social surroundings that are comfortable and familiar and being transported against their will to a new world. That is happening, notably, in the two most important destinations for immigrants, the United States and Europe. Anti-immigration sentiment is powerful in both places, although it should be said that the political cleavages in both cases differ from the normal left-right cleavages and differ from each other. To put it briefly, and I'd be happy to respond at greater length during question time, in Europe the cleavage is horizontal, elite versus mass. In the United States, there are cleavages within both major political parties. Both have a pro-immigrant camp and an anti-immigrant camp. But in both places, simply looking at the politics today would lead you to conclude that the resistance to immigration, and therefore the resistance to the economic benefits that immigration can bring, is strong and growing stronger. And that is true for the moment. But it may not be true indefinitely. We may be on the cusp of a sea change in popular attitudes toward wider immigration in both important places of destination. Why? Because for different reasons, and for some of the same reasons, both the United States and Western Europe are due for structurally slower growth in the decade, and I fear decades ahead. As this reality sinks in, populations will look around for ways to accelerate economic growth. Freer immigration is one of the easiest and most obvious ways to do so, and so in the future, unlike the present, wider immigration may become politically more popular and therefore may become a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I hope that what you say is true. I think that, I hope that it is possible for people to understand the benefits of allowing people to move wherever they want. It's obvious that from an individual perspective, being allowed to go where you want is a positive. Nobody volunteers to be prevented from going where they want to go. But at a societal level, people find it very hard to understand why there might be extraordinary benefits of allowing other people to come and go as they please. Now, one of the arguments that I think is emphasized and understood is the notion that the act of moving itself, the act of living in more than one place, makes people more likely to come up with world-changing ideas. And I'm going to ask Hal to expand on this.
No, thank you. Let me share my story, which is really about innovators. Had the chance to work with Clayton Christensen at Harvard Business School and Jeff Dyer at Wharton, and basically we interviewed over 100 of the world's greatest innovators. So we talked with people like Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, Pierre Omidyar, founder of eBay, Nicholas Zenstrom, founder of Skype, and tried to dig into how did they get these great ideas that built businesses that in some cases changed entire industries or built entire industries. One of the things we discovered with these people is that many of them were networkers for new ideas. In other words, the way in which they got new ideas was they would intentionally talk to people who didn't look, think, or act like them. And if there's anything immigration can do in a country context, it provides the rich opportunity for someone to have a conversation with somebody else from an entirely different worldview. So those folks, having those conversations, build ideas that other people are incapable of producing. Now, at the individual level, what we also know from our data, about 6,000 entrepreneurs, innovators, executives from around the world, is that when anyone lives and adjusts and adapts to different cultures, living in different parts of the world, they automatically up their probability that they will get ideas that build new businesses. So either within ourselves by living in two different cultures, or opening ourselves up when someone does immigrate into our world or we go into theirs. The worst of all immigration worlds is immigrating but staying within our own worldview cocoon. And once we jump across those boundaries and those borders, then the opportunity for new ideas just flourishes.
That seems to me intuitively, I mean, I've lived in a number of different countries, and it seems to me that when you live in a different culture, you're constantly forced to adapt to novel ways of doing things, and as you're constantly forced to practice this, you grow more adept at it. You've said, I believe, that it's not just living in different countries that matters, but also experiencing different kinds of industries. I believe you quoted the example of Steve Jobs here, working both in the entertainment industry and in the technology industry, and marrying the insights that he got from those two industries to create something extraordinary, namely Apple as we see it today. But I also, I mean, I've noticed, and I talked to a lot of business people, I talk to a lot of immigrants, and very often you find that people who've lived in more than one place, they do two things. They see things that the locals can't see because they're looking at things with a fresh eye. I mean, a good example there would be Chung Yan, who was is a Chinese lady. She moved to America about 20 years ago, and she spotted just two things. One was that Americans throw away huge amounts of waste paper, lots of instruction manuals for barbecue sets and, issues of the Economist that they haven't quite got around to reading yet. And the other thing she noticed was that you have all these ships that go from China to America fully laden with, steel bars and televisions and plastic toys, but then go back to China half empty because the things that America sells to China tend to be weightless. We're talking intellectual property and Hollywood movies and IOUs from the government. And so she put these two things together and she thought, let's gather up all this waste paper and put it on those ships, which is relatively cheap because they're half empty, send it back to China, and she used her contacts to set up some factories there and recycle the waste paper into cardboard boxes, which then, of course, some people could put televisions in and put back on those ships and send back to America. And it's a sort of wonderful continent, ocean-spanning business that's made her into a billionaire, and it comes of having that insight that comes from being outside and seeing things, and also being able to create bridges between two cultures. Michael, you were mentioning about the opposition that there is to immigration in a lot of countries. I mean, it's even true at the sort of university level, where you'd have thought that people would welcome foreign students into a country because A, they're paying fees to attend universities, and B, they're enriching the undergraduate experience. And yet, I mean, in Britain, for example, we see that they're trying to place absolute caps on the number of students who can come in. When you see policies like this and how popular they are, how can you be sanguine about the future of migration policy in the rich world?
I wouldn't call myself sanguine exactly, but since the political forces are running so strongly in one direction against wider immigration and running most strongly below the university level and running strongly among people who are threatened. After all, wider immigration to the United States does undercut some low-skilled workers. So what I'm suggesting is that that might change more rapidly than we think when the dominant concern in both the United States and in Europe, for some of the same reasons and for different reasons, ceases to be, let's keep out these strangers who are changing our country and making it into something we don't recognize, and becomes, how do we get economic growth to sustain a rising standard of living that we're not able to do any other way? I'm suggesting that the framework and the context within which immigration will be viewed politically, and politics is the context in which, after all, immigration policy is set, I'm suggesting that there are forces in motion that could, not necessarily will, but could change that.
Hal, what do you think? I mean, when you put to people your ideas about how free movement fosters creativity and productivity, I mean, what kind of a reaction do you get from people? Are you confident that you can persuade people of this?
I think people who have not had the opportunity to live in two worlds, they sometimes have their eyes glazed over and they don't know quite what you're talking about. But the data are consistent and compelling. It's not just my research, but there are researchers all over the world. And essentially, if we ever embed ourselves deep enough into a different worldview, we come out of it with the capacity to make these connections nobody else can make. The reason why Steve Jobs did what he did, in part, was he was so immersed in two completely different industries. The computer industry with Apple, the media and the entertainment industry with Pixar, and that enabled him to put things together like nobody else put together. The same could be said for folks who live in different countries. And this is where the whole undercutting of lower skilled jobs is in one sense critical, because there are millions of those out there. But I think what senior leaders often miss completely is that when immigration doesn't happen and this opportunity for conversations at the intersections of cultures, when those don't happen, the deepest undercuts are at the upper level. It's because then new business models don't get created, which are the engines of growth. And so for me, it's fascinating that I'd say 60, 70% of most US companies are run by leaders who are not innovative. They're good at getting things done. They know how to hit the results and the bottom line button, but they don't innovate themselves. But when you look at innovative companies who consistently generate a premium that investors believe something cool is going to happen in the future, they're led by innovative leaders. And I wonder sometimes if the leaders who are making the immigration policies are so obsessed with results and delivery that they completely miss the boat on the discovery, innovation, new opportunity side. That's this rich, positive window from something that's often portrayed so negatively.
Super. I'm going to, because this is a very, we're trying to keep these sessions going as punchy and quickly as possible. I know that you both have masses more you'd like to say, but I'm going to throw it open to the audience. So if you want to raise your hand, usually the first person to stick their hand up gets a question, and after that lots of hands go up, and so you don't get a question. If you can identify yourself and say who you are and which of the panelists you'd like to ask, or just throw it open to anyone. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Vibhuti Jha, and I'm representing Human Potential Project. That's my company. My question is to both the panelists. Is the problem with immigration related to issues arising out of illegal immigration, or immigration itself is a problem? My thought process is that the entire process is a problem due to the fact that in the West and America, we are not able to handle illegal issues arising out of illegal immigration. Thank you.
Yes, in the United States, the issue of illegal immigration looms large. America is a country of immigrants. Americans have traditionally been, with important exceptions, immigration friendly. I believe that that is still the case. And the way that illegal immigration makes itself felt is pretty clear. Everybody knows and everybody agrees that the United States should be admitting and retaining more highly skilled people. There's the so-called Staple Act, which would give every non-American who gets a PhD in math, science, or technology an automatic green card. There's no real opposition to that, and yet it has not been passed through the Congress because people in both parties do not want to do any immigration legislation without dealing with the question of illegals. And dealing with the question of illegals is difficult because both the Democrats and the Republicans are divided. Within the Democratic Party, Hispanic groups and politicians want basically to make it easier for illegals to get citizenship because they believe that they will vote Democratic. But an important pillar of the Democratic coalition, namely the labor unions, opposes this because illegals will undercut wages of low-skilled people. So the Democrats can't arrive at a position on this, and therefore we can't pass the Staple Act. On the Republican side, social conservatives are offended by the idea that people will get away with jumping the queue. They're offended at the illegality of illegal immigrants, and some of them worry about the dilution of what they regard as American culture. But another very important part of the Republican coalition, namely businessmen, especially small businessmen and especially the construction industry, rely very heavily on illegal immigrants because they work cheaply. So the Republicans can't agree on a position, and because neither party can agree on a position on the illegals, it's been impossible to pass the legislation that everybody knows would be good for the United States. And it goes precisely to your point, that everybody recognizes would be good because high-skilled immigrants create jobs.
There's also a certain lack of effort among the sort of very top leaders because people have bought into that analysis. Many people, it's very good analysis, but some of the top leaders, such as Barack Obama, believe that because that's the case, it's not worth trying anything. So, one of his promises in 2008 was that within the first 100 days in office, he would propose and pass comprehensive immigration reform. And he didn't even try, which is one of the more disappointing things about his time in office.
Well, I think, just to reply briefly, Robert, that is absolutely right. But I think what we can conclude from this is that if you are a political leader and your base, your coalition is deeply divided on an issue, you have a very powerful incentive to ignore that issue.
Yes. Can we have another question from the audience, please?
You have one up here.
Okay, I can't see it, but up there, please.
Okay, yes. Sorry about that. My name is Basma Ali, and I work with Georgetown University in Qatar, part of Qatar Foundation. Now, one of the things that I've noticed today that in the issues we're talking about in immigration, that we look at immigration, whether with its added value or challenges, as a modern phenomena. And the truth is, it's an old phenomena. None of us in this room or outside this hall actually is pure from Adam and Eve. We're all immigrants and somehow. And all cultures and civilizations have mingled, whether through invasions and wars or through commerce and trading and through intermarriage and so on. And I think we should look at it also from a social perspective. Like when Alexander the Great went all the way to Persia, he took Greek culture all the way to Persia. And also,
So do you have a question, Matt?
Yes, the question is, by studying history, what can we apply in modern times in terms of immigration? And at the same time, what are the new challenges in immigration that, making it the formal way that goes with immigration and the bureaucracy, the new bureaucratic laws that limit immigration? like these two aspects actually, like what can we take from the past
Okay,
and what
okay. Hal, do you want to have a bash at that?
No, I'd be happy to. I've lived in Abu Dhabi for a couple of years recently, and so I have a sense of that region. And it's a fascinating region because the Islamic Golden Age, from roughly the 9th century to the 13th or 14th century, was absolutely overflowing with new ideas. So for any woman in the room who's wearing lipstick, it came from that period in Islamic, in that region. That's where lipstick was discovered. But the point is, that period was a function of open borders. There was incredible traffic going on through that region from all over the world. And it was people living at the intersection who weren't afraid of conversations across different cultures that opened up these incredible ideas that we now...
It was at the intersection of the great trade routes.
This intersection of trade routes. And when those routes, when they closed that off, and when people were unable to bump into different continents and cultures, the game was over. Things shut down, ideas ceased, and that was the end of it.
One quick question, yes, in the middle. Could you wait until the microphone gets to you, please? Well, we like to record it, sorry.
Thank you. My organization is UNICEF, and I work in leadership development. And I was curious to know, in the 6,000 people that you interviewed, was there a good sample of government innovators, non-for-profit innovators, innovators who work in the UN and those kind of industries? And if yes, what did you find? And if not, why do you think that we don't have enough innovators in those type of industries?
Great question. Hal?
Quick response is, we collected data. At INSEAD, we have programs for social entrepreneurs and leadership development programs. And so we've got about 200 people who have filled this assessment out around their innovation skills, who are running some of the most creative, innovative social innovation organizations in the world. And the bottom line is, they do the same things. And the cutting edge of that is they not only get new ideas in part by talking to different people, but they care even deeper about changing the world with their ideas. And that has its own consequences, which we can't go into here. But the bottom line is, the answer in terms of I'm trying to get new ideas, whether I'm in the social sector, the government sector, or the private business sector, one of the mechanisms for creating those blockbuster ideas is crossing different boundaries to get new insights. There's a great book called Never Eat Alone. And my add to that is, never eat alone with someone who looks, thinks, or acts like you. And the moment that happens, it may sound trivial, but I think it will cut down some of this very deeply unproductive conversation at even the national political level. If people would learn how to have conversations across different boundaries that were more productive. And then get greater ideas on top of it.
That is an inspiring thought to end with. We have about 17 seconds left, so I think I'm just going to end. We've agreed, haven't you, with we should have more conversations like this, but we're out of time. So thank you very much, Hal Gregersen. Thank you very much, Michael Mandelbaum, and thank you very much, the audience.